a stranger to a friend, to live in such a way that has no end. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other and nothing more.
And to be bold, to be brave, it is the thinking that the heart can still be saved, and the darkness can come quick.
The danger's in the anger and the hanging on to it. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other and nothing more. And everyone is such a a world is full of endless possibilities. And heroes don't look like they used to. They look like you do. We are love, we are one, we are how we treat each other when the day is done. We are peace, we are war, we are how we treat each other and nothing more. We are how we treat each other and nothing more. We are how we treat each other.
As we begin our time of worship together, I want to share with you the slightly modified words by Theodore Parker. I think many of you will find them familiar. We strive so that ours will be a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple is not a building, but all space, anywhere we see a need. Its shrine is the place of goodness in our hearts. Its creed, all truth. Its rituals, the works of caring and love needed in this world. And now I ask that you join in singing these words together as our musical call to worship. I hope the music helps the message resonate in your heart. So please stand as you're able and join in singing our opening song, Be Ours a Religion. We'll sing it through twice.
Everywhere, its temple of space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all true, its ritual
Won't you join me in our lighting of the chalice? We kindle this flame, symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to the work for justice.
Good morning. Now is the time for all of our families to come in front of their screens if you're still at home. If not, the children who are here can come down front for our little time for all ages. Make sure you're seated so you can see this screen. So come on down. That's her seat, Mom.
She can.
Sit up there? Come on up. Can you get up? You want to go with Mama now? Okay.
You gonna start?
So today, Rebecca and I are going to work our time for all ages together. So go ahead and start.
We have a Bible.
No.
Have you guys heard of a book called the Bible? You heard of it? Okay. It is full of stories. And I want to tell you a couple of those stories today, okay? Feel free to listen or run around or whatever. The first story is one about a man named Job. Now, he was a good man, but God decided to test him and see if he'd still be good even if a lot of bad things happened to him. So, first thing, God sent thousands of bugs called locusts that came and ate up all of Job's crops. Ick! You want to be around all those bugs? No. Then God made all of Job's cattle die, and then he lost all his money. And now the thing is, Job never questioned. He did question God, but he never blamed God. And because of that, God said, well, you passed my test. And he made all those good things in his life come back. You know what? I don't like that story. You like that story? I don't like that story either. It makes God seem really mean. It's kind of scary. So instead of asking if the story is true or not, what I want to do is ask if you think, is there anything you can learn from that story? What could you learn? Think about it a minute.
What do you guys think? Am I on? Yeah. What do you guys think? What could we learn from a story where people get bad things happen to them, but then turn around later, good things happen? So what do you think our lesson could be from that? Anybody have an idea you want to share with me?
Does anything bad ever happen to you? Has anything bad ever happened to you?
What do you think, Rosalind? Just to keep trying, because bad things sometimes happen, don't they? Good idea. I like that. And if you work hard enough, and maybe if good things will happen, then that feels better in life, doesn't it? So we should focus on doing things that we know are right, even if bad things happen, right? Okay.
We don't always have to look to blame somebody. All right, there's another story. Here we go. It's called The Loaves and the Fishes. Have you ever heard of that one? No? Well, Jesus was talking to a really big crowd of people, and it got to be time to eat. But Jesus wasn't done talking, and the people didn't want to leave. So Jesus told his followers, here, take this loaf and this fish and pass it out among all the people so they have something to eat. And his friend said, that's not enough. 1 or 2 loaves of bread and all of 2 fish? That's not going to feed all these people. And Jesus said, oh, well, go ahead and pass it out and see what happens. So they did. And every time somebody took some, the next person still had enough. And then the next person too. And sure enough, they ended up feeding everybody. Okay. Do you think that one's true?
Bread and a couple of fish, and it fed hundreds of people.
Could you feed your whole school that way?
2 loaves of bread and 2 or 3 fish to feed your whole school? So maybe one of the things that we ought to think about with Bible stories is not so much, did it actually happen this way? Were there really only 2 loaves and 3 fish? Or should we maybe instead be asking, what can we learn from this story? And any ideas? What can you learn about this story, from this story? Yes. Yes, thank you, Rosalind. We can always share. Sometimes when you don't have a whole lot of things, maybe you don't have a whole lot of toys or a whole lot of food, and somebody wants to share them with you, it feels like you should say, no, there's only enough for me. But does it make you feel better or worse when you share with somebody? Does it make you feel better? Yeah, that's a nice way to think of it, is that we can find enough for everyone if we all work together and share, right?
Okay, here's one more story. I remember learning this one. It's about Moses. You heard of Moses? Okay, well, he was taking care of his sheep and he saw something amazing. He saw a bush that was on fire, but no matter how long it burned, it never burned up. It just kept burning. And when Moses went near, not only was it burning, but he heard a voice coming from that burning bush. And the voice was God. And it said to him, I've chosen you to be the one to lead my people away from slavery out of Egypt. And Moses said, I don't want to. I'm scared. He didn't want to go to a strange place, and he didn't want to go alone. And God told him that he wouldn't be alone, that some of his family would go with him. So Moses did it. He took his wife and his sons and his brother, and he headed out to Egypt. And you know what? He did it. He freed all those slaves and brought them home. Do I believe that one? No.
But if you don't believe that it actually happened, that the bush was burning and that God was talking to Moses, what do you think, how can we learn a lesson from this, even if we don't think it's 100% fact? Do you ever hear like a little voice in your head saying, you know, Mom said you could have one cookie, you should not be reaching for another cookie? Does that voice? And sometimes we say, go away voice, I want another cookie. But there's still sometimes that conscience inside us that tells us how to do things correctly and how to do things right. And if we do things that are good and help other people, do you think we will be alone when Moses was afraid to go alone? Do you think that when you make a choice to do something right, that other people will be with you and help you do it and help you make the right choice so that we're not alone? And we can have people help us through things that are difficult or even kind of scary. Although I don't think we're going to ask you to take a whole bunch of people out in the desert, okay? Pretty safe. I will not ask that of you. All right.
Now, after you guys leave, I'm going to talk to the grown-ups here about another story. It's called the Good Samaritan. Now, when you get home today, or for those of you on Zoom when the service is over, I want you to ask the adults in your house what they learned from the story.
It's like a test. See if they listened.
Not whether it's true or not, but what we could learn. Okay? See if you can learn something from this story. Because Bible stories, they may not be true, but they have a lot to teach us.
So now I'm going to ask the adults to rise as you're able and form our bridge of love. Kids, let's go on out. We're going to go through the foyer and out. I'll meet you outside. We're only singing the chorus of Soon the Day Will Arrive. Okay.
Wait and see what a world it can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me.
Good morning. And welcome to Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is Reverend Sarah Oglesby Dunnigan, and I go by she, her, and I'm so excited to be your settled minister and to be supporting Worship Associate Rebecca Riggs for this service. So, I also learned how to do all the AV, like yesterday with Mark. So I want some credit for that too. Welcome to this place, this time, these people, this opportunity to build community and to honor each other's common humanity and the common good that we can create together. I hope you'll take a moment today to notice who else is here and online, to share a smile and a hello and some words of encouragement. If you're online, you can give each other a wave, and if you're here in person, you can take a minute to just take a look around and take a deep breath. Hello, friends. If you're new, like me, welcome. We may have taken different paths to get to this place in this community, but we are here now together. Some of you may have grown up as a Unitarian Universalist. Some of you may have grown up in another tradition. Maybe you grew up Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu, or like me, you may have grown up outside of organized religious paths. You may have been a wanderer and a seeker, exploring different spiritual practices and beliefs about why we are here and what we're called to do and to be. No matter how you got here, no matter how long you've been coming or how recently you found us, we're really glad you're here. Let the people say welcome. If you're a visitor today, I'd especially like to greet you this morning. Here in the sanctuary, if you are a visitor and you feel comfortable standing, just so that we can see who you are and meet you at the end of service, you don't have to. If you're too shy, you can wave your hand. If you're on Zoom, you can say hello to other folks in Zoom and introduce yourself in the chat, and we'd love for you to do that. We want to know what brought you here and what we can do to welcome you into this community. At the end of the service, there'll be a welcome circle in the back. It'll be over there to my right and your left. As you go out those doors, you can't possibly miss it. It'll be a chance to answer questions and begin the process of getting to know each other. I'll stop by there as well to say hello. We also have a guest here today from another organization that will be at the back tables there. His name is Kenyon Smotherman, and he works with an organization. There he is, waving his hand to us. Y'all turn around and say hi. Kenyon and I both came from the Southeast, so give him your best Phoenix welcome. He works with an organization that also does voter outreach, and he'll be next to the UU The Vote folks and hopefully getting to know them, but also sharing with you about his organization. And if you need help with your voter registration or anything related to that, please introduce yourself and get some connection. So we love to meet our partners in doing the important work of getting folks to be great citizens that get involved in stuff. We also have a pastoral care associate available every week if you need a listening ear. And I'll remind you that we also have some spots up here during our centering time if you want to light a candle or move a stone for something that's on your heart. So there's someone here in the sanctuary, Nancy Woomer, will be up front after the service if you need somebody to talk to. And online, Michael Woomer will be on Zoom if you need just somebody you want to reach out to and share what's on your heart this week at this time. They'll also be responsible for pastoral care for the following week. And this is just a really great way for us to support each other. It's one of the many ways that we have to care for each other here at VUU. So for those of you here in the sanctuary, I'd like to remind you to turn off your cell phones. And those of you with small children, if they've stayed with you, we do have a little space over here you can get away to if you need to. I actually don't see any right now, but if someone pops in with a baby, you can let them know they can head over there if they need to. We're so grateful that we can be together in this way. And I want to take a moment now to exchange a hello with those folks who are on Zoom. And, we're grateful that we can be together in more than one way in this room and on Zoom, and that we can face the challenges of staying healthy in a pandemic and staying connected. So everybody wave to our Zoom folks. They're waving to you, and we're waving to them. We're so grateful, and especially for the time and talent it takes to make it possible for us to gather online and in person. Thanks to everyone for being here in whatever ways that you can. So welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to be your new minister.
Hi, good morning. My name's Lynn Demuth. I'm your song leader today, and Linda Horton, our talented pianist, is playing. So thanks, Linda. We are a community that strives for love to be the ultimate power that guides us. There is much we can't do to fix the world, but if we give from a love deep within and be a neighbor to all, we are doing the work that can change the world. Please rise in body or spirit and sing with me, "Love Will Guide Us." Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. Please be seated.
Our religious community is like a river formed from the many streams of our lives that meet and merge and flow to the sea. As members and friends of this religious community, we share our time and our energy, our creativity and imagination, our vision, our talents, skills and gifts, and the streams of our individual lives come together to create a river that is both deep and broad. A river that is made of many streams, sustains life, and refreshes the land through which it flows. But the river of this community also depends on our shared financial support and makes real our shared values and vision. So we will now receive an offering for the support of this religious community and its work in the world. There are many ways to contribute to this community. We need the support of each and every one of you, however you can do that. As the ushers pass the plates here in the sanctuary, as one way for us to give to each other and an important visual symbol of our giving, there are also many other ways to give, through texting, through email, online, and even snail mail, whatever works for you. So what is important is that together we give, and from this, we as a religious community, we live.
Teach you some hand motions for our offering. We're going to stay seated. Please sing and sign with me on From You I Receive. It's from you I receive to you. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. Thank you. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Thank you for your generosity. We now move into a time of meditation. This is only a very short time, but it's a reminder to us that it's important to take time to find our center, to reflect or pray or meditate, whatever works for you to find that small inner voice in all the busyness of our everyday lives. It's also a time, as mentioned earlier, that you can quietly light a candle or put a stone in the water to give expression to what you carry in your heart. Let us relax and sit with the silence for just a moment before a sung meditation in closing. Please stay seated, but continue the spirit of meditation by singing the chorus of the song, "There is a Balm in Gilead."
There is a balm in Gilead.
Sometimes I feel discouraged and think my work is in vain. But then a spirit fills me and revives my soul again.
There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul.
If you cannot preach like Peter, if you cannot pray like Paul, you can share the love within you and spread your hope to all.
There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul.
So may it be.
These words from Fred Small. I recently heard a news story on evangelical Christians who systematically walk the streets of Colorado Springs, block by block, praying for the strangers who live in the nearby houses. They don't ring doorbells, they just walk and pray. Liberal religionists often lump together a lot of people in what we call the religious right. We smile at their biblical literalism. We call them haters, and sometimes we hate them for their hating. But do we love as well as they? As these people who walk block after block, praying for strangers. How well do I love? It's the most demanding, concrete, radical, and important question I can ask myself. How well did I love my spouse at breakfast this morning? How well did I love my friend, my neighbor, my coworker, the last time we spoke? How well did I love the cashier who was slow, the bagger who put the vegetables on the bottom, the driver behind me who honked when I hesitated one split second after the light turned green? How generous am I with my love? How universalist? Do I visit the old, the infirm, the sick? Do I visit the prisoner? Do I welcome the stranger? Do I help those in need? How far will I go for love? How much will I risk?
Carole King wrote "You've Got a Friend" in 1971, saying it wrote itself which is easy for her to say. It was first recorded by James Taylor and many others since. I hope we all have at least one friend in our lives who will be there, no matter what. I know I am blessed to have that. We all need that person in times of trouble, winter, spring, summer, or fall. And to paraphrase Lincoln, some of you will know all of this song, and all of you will know some of it, so please join me in the chorus. When you're down and troubled, and you need a helping hand, and nothing is going right, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running, yeah, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got a friend. If the sky above you should turn dark and full of clouds, and that old north wind should begin to blow, keep your head together and call my name out loud now. Soon I'll be knocking upon your door. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running, yeah, yeah, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ain't it good to know that you've got a friend when people can be so cold? They'll hurt you and desert you. Well, they'll take your soul if you let them. Oh, but don't you let them. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running, yeah, yeah, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, fall, all you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got a friend. You've got a friend. Thank you.
You know, I really love the music that goes with the service. And every time I feel like I don't need to say anything. We have our message. Thank you, Lynn. As may be true for many of you, I was not raised Unitarian Universalist. My family was Presbyterian, and I went to Sunday school and to church every week. I participated in the youth group, and we always stayed for the congregational potlucks. I enjoyed my church, and I don't remember resisting going. I'm actually grateful for that Christian background that I was given. The community, the security, the stories, the traditions, these were all good things. And I think that the foundation that I received in Christianity probably helped me find my way to Unitarian Universalism, for I didn't want to give up on religion and all the positive things that it had held for me. But one of the first things I do remember questioning in the Protestant upbringing of mine were some of the Bible stories we were taught. Many seemed perplexing, especially at about junior high age. For example, I could never quite believe in the virgin birth, at least not after I'd had that talk about sex in Girl Scouts and with my mom. As you heard in the Time for All Ages, Moses talking to a burning bush that spoke but didn't really burn, that was another problem for me. Abraham, prepared to kill his own son, was way beyond my comprehension and still is. And the parable of the prodigal son, that never quite sat right with me either. But there is a story that I remember that was not a problem. Its message seemed clear, understandable, easy to accept. And that story was the Good Samaritan. Here's that story written in the second half of chapter 10 in the Gospel of Luke. A lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Rabbi," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law?" The lawyer answered, "You shall love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Jesus said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." But the lawyer pressed Jesus, saying, "And who then is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal and brought him to the inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend.' Now," said Jesus to the lawyer, "which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" He answered, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus replied, "Go and do likewise." The story that we've come to call the Good Samaritan is actually an old story, maybe one that was around and in circulation even some time before Jesus found this particular opportunity to use it. Its lesson was pretty basic and straightforward, and was supposed to serve as an illustration of the central teachings of Judaism and later Christianity. Love your neighbor as yourself. And while I remember the story clearly from Sunday school, I don't ever really remember studying it. I don't remember being asked to think about it in any depth, or to wonder that it might have something to teach me beyond just the genial instruction to try to help those in need. Now, from an adult perspective, I think I may have missed something. How could this story guide us as we try to live out our UU principles in today's hurting world? Like most people, when I remembered or thought about that old story at all, the neighbor Jesus was defining was the guy who got attacked. The lesson then is that anyone who's in need should be considered our neighbor. Anyone we might be able to help is the one we are called to love. That's not a bad lesson to take away with us, though it certainly isn't an easy one to live out. But I think the story that has come down to us through the centuries is much more interesting and complex than that. Because what Jesus was teaching in his version of it, I think, had very little to do with the way the lawyer asked the original question. The lawyer asked, "Who then is my neighbor?" Yet at the end of the story, Jesus asked the question a different way. He said, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" Do you catch that subtle shift in language? It completely changes the meaning of what's being asked. In the rabbi's version, the relevant question is not, to whom do we owe our care? Instead, it has to do with whether and how we generate that care and concern within ourselves. Not who is my neighbor, but rather how do I learn to behave as a neighbor? Now, how not to behave as a neighbor is clear enough from the story. We don't get the chance to excuse the first two people who pass by wondering if they maybe just didn't see the guy. The story says, "Now by chance a priest was going down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite." Well, there's the first instruction on how not to be a neighbor. See, but don't really look. Notice, but instead of coming closer, cross over to the other side of the road. And when you do that, when you choose not to get close enough to know very much, you can tell yourself all sorts of comforting things. Man, that guy must have really gotten drunk last night to still be sleeping it off in the ditch. Or, he looks pretty unhealthy, but whatever it is might be contagious, so I better let someone else deal with it. Or, that guy's obviously dead. And since there's nothing that can be done for him, I'm not going to get sidetracked and be late. By contrast, the Samaritan did not assume that he knew the situation or that he knew what was called for. He knew only that he was ignorant of what had happened to the man or what the man might need. And so we're told that he did that simplest of things in the very first moment. When he first saw the man, he truly looked at him. He chose not to look away. It's so easy to forget how much of our work in the world hinges on that very first, very simplest of choices. We see misery or injustice. We see brokenness in our hurting world, and we choose not to look away. We make the decision to look, and then the looking we allow ourselves to feel. The Samaritan, we're told, was moved with pity. And it was out of that movement of his heart, the willingness to come close enough to feel something, that all other actions grew. He went to him, was the next step. That is, he brought himself close enough to find something out, close enough to listen. In one of his essays, Ram Dass writes about how important it is when we are moved to help in the world that we go near enough and listen carefully enough to allow ourselves to be guided by more than just our own impulse. When we draw close enough to other people, he writes, quote, we hear what help they really require, what license they are actually giving us to help, what potential there is for change, unquote. It is only after he went near enough to learn what was needed that the Samaritan then acted, cleaned and dressed the wounds, put the man on his own horse, and led him to an inn and took care of him there. I wonder what important business the Samaritan might have set out to accomplish when he had left home that morning. What busy schedule he might have been planning to keep. Whatever his important or ambitious plans, one of the most astounding gifts out of all the gifts he gave was the gift of his time. Now, I suppose it's possible that he planned to stay at that inn overnight all along and just brought the beat-up man with him. But somehow the story implies that he took time out, that he set aside the other dimensions of his life and stayed the night with the stranger, perhaps stayed up all night with him to make sure he'd live. And only then did he go on his way, resume the schedule and the plans he'd already made, leaving behind the gift of money and a promise that he would stop by on his way back to make sure the money had been enough. Now, said Jesus to the lawyer, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? When the lawyer gave the correct response, Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. So casually spoken, but what an amazing order that is. How often can we imagine ourselves going as far as the Samaritan went, to act out the imperative to be a neighbor in our world? In the reading this morning, Fred Small asked, how far will I go for love? How much will I risk? Well, how far should we go? How far are we asked to go? Called to go, capable of going? I went to college at William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. The college and the restored colonial Williamsburg are very close. And often I would walk through the historic district as a way to escape the pressure of classes and papers and grades. But for tourists, getting around the historic area is tricky because it's completely blocked off to cars. There are two bus systems, one for transportation around the edges of the historic district, and another for getting back and forth to the visitor center, where all the parking lots are. There are maps and signs to help tourists get on the right bus, but it certainly can be very confusing. One day, as I was walking down one side street of colonial Williamsburg, it started to drizzle, and I realized I needed to speed up and get back to campus in time for a class. Just as I turned around and picked up my pace, I was stopped by an Asian man who spoke very little English. He had a map of the area and was obviously confused by the two bus systems and where to get the bus to get back to the visitor center and the parking lots rather than just around the historic district. Through gestures and pointing on the map, I tried to help, telling him the bus stop he needed was not the one close, but the one several streets over. I tried to point him in the right direction. He smiled and nodded and thanked me, but as he headed off, he looked just as scared and unsure as when I'd first seen him. That's all. I hurried on my way, and I honestly don't remember whether I was late to class or not. But ever since, I think about that episode with deep regret. I didn't pass by on the other side of the road when this man was the one in my path. But neither did I go the distance that was required to see him safely through his confusion. I have wished ever since that I had looked more carefully, listened more thoughtfully, taken more time to get this bewildered soul firmly on the right bus. I don't mean that this was some huge sin, just a regrettable, selfish moment when I really didn't act as a good neighbor. How much should we love? The answer isn't a solid thing. It shifts and changes with every single encounter along the path. There are always distances we can't go, limits beyond which we cannot pass without damaging ourselves or someone else who needs us. Even the Samaritan had his limits. He went on along his own journey the next day. He didn't feel called to nurse the man fully back to health or to give him money to make up for what was stolen. I think the lesson here is not that we should give all we've got every time we're asked to give. Only that we should look, that we should draw near, that we should allow our hearts to be moved, that we should listen carefully. The next step of deciding what to do isn't something we can study in advance or learn from How to Be a Good Neighbor manual. It is revealed when we take the time to be attentive. It's also worth noting another twist in the story, which, giving my Presbyterian upbringing credit, I do remember learning back in Sunday school. The Samaritans were a despised group of people to those who were listening to Jesus. They were considered unclean, immoral, not at all the sort of person that a rabbi would normally hold up as a role model. By contrast, the two people who passed by the wounded man were exactly the sort for whom you would expect to draw a fine example. A priest, and then a Levite, a member of the educated class. For us, the story might work better if we modernized it. Then we might get a little closer to that profound uneasiness that must have arisen in those who were listening to Jesus. What if we heard that the first one to pass by the beaten man was a Unitarian Universalist worship associate? And the second who crossed the road and continued on his way was a liberal political activist. And then along that same road came the leader of the Oath Keepers, or an arch-conservative CEO. And this is the one who stopped and helped the man. Here is one of the subtexts of Jesus' message. Not only is he saying, this is how you should rise to the call of being a neighbor in the world, he's also saying, did you catch that zinger? Did you watch your biases rise up, outraged that the one from whom you expected nothing is the one who's teaching you this lesson? This part of the story says, don't let your judgments and your prejudices blind you to what's real. Take your lessons where they arise and allow yourself to see that even those you scorn may be your teachers. Now, maybe you don't truly scorn anyone, but for each of us, there is someone or some group of people from which we expect little or routinely overlook. A part of the lesson is that we should not miss what even these people can give us. A teacher suddenly receives an insight from one of her dullest or most difficult students. A volunteer hears something marvelous, even prophetic, from the street person who she's helping to feed. A tired white-collar worker is comforted or made to laugh by the guy at the gas station. A political activist suddenly hears compassion or wisdom from someone he had categorized as the enemy. Many years ago now, in the spring, I took a math class on Monday nights. It was part of my teacher's required continuing education, and it was not a good experience for me. I had to be at class by 3:45, and I didn't get out until 8 p.m. Usually, I just gulped down a homemade sandwich as I drove to class, but one Monday, I went to a fast food restaurant drive-through. I was in a hurry and definitely not in a good mood, dreading the hours to come. As I was handed my order, the nose-pierced, tattooed teenager said, "Thank you for coming to Arby's." And then he glanced up toward the sky and added, "How great for you to be out on a day like this." Now, first, I wondered if that was part of some sociology project to note people's reaction to such an unexpected greeting. But I also realized that it was indeed a beautiful day, and I'd hardly noticed. How great to be out on a day like this. As I went to class, I felt an easing of my tension. I know that I went to class with a better attitude. It was such a small gift, that greeting, so easy to dismiss. But I believe my entire group had a better experience that evening because I brought a bit more gratitude and awareness to the class. Because a thoughtful, nose-pierced, tattooed teenager from whom I expected nothing but mediocre service had said, "How great for you to be out on a day like this." When people ask us, what is Unitarian Universalism? There are lots of answers we try to give, complicated by the variations in our beliefs and by the twists and turns of our history. But we don't usually think of Bible stories to provide an answer. And yet, if we had to pare it all down to the sparest of teachings, wouldn't most of what we strive for be held somewhere in that story? Aren't these the kinds of questions that we consider to be of ultimate worth? Who then is my neighbor? How shall I learn to be a neighbor in this tired and hurting world? Surely right at the heart of what we profess to believe are the lessons in the story taught by a young upstart rabbi all those centuries ago. How much should we love? Look, go close, feel, listen, do what you can, and always be willing to be surprised. Blessed be. Thank you. Our closing hymn is the song, "I'm Gonna Lift My Sister Up." When we lift up each other, when we lift up our loved ones and our neighbors in need, this is how we learn to go on. Please stand as you're able and sing together with Lynn as she leads us in "I'm Gonna Lift My Sister Up."
I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. If I don't lift her up, if I don't lift her up, if I don't lift her up, I will fall down. I'm gonna lift my brother up, he is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my brother up, he is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my brother up, he is not heavy. If I don't lift him up, if I don't lift him up, if I don't lift him up, I will fall down. I'm gonna lift my people up, they are not heavy. I'm gonna lift my people up, they are not heavy. I'm gonna lift my people up, they are not heavy. If I don't lift them up, if I don't lift them up, if I don't lift them up, I will fall down. I'm gonna lift my neighbor up, he is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my neighbors up, they are not heavy. I'm gonna lift my neighbors up, they are not heavy. If I don't lift them up, if I don't lift them up, if I don't lift them up, I will fall down.
Please be seated. And now our closing words. Go now in peace. Deeply regard each other, truly listen to each other. Speak what each of you must speak, do what each of you feel must be done. And be ready at any moment to open your heart and be a neighbor to all. Now Reverend Sarah will lead us in extinguishing our chalice.
Won't you join me in these words of extinguishing? Though we extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us in this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again. Go in peace. Blessed be. Come to the welcome circle if you're new. Say hello to folks in the back. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon.